The materials you will need for the Claire wrap dress are 2.5 to 3.5 yards of lightweight woven fabric, 20 inches of interfacing, matching thread, pins or weights, scissors, measuring tape, and the pattern. We will start our Claire dress by sewing the belt. Fold your belt in half, right sides together, and sew 1/2 inch from the edge. At the end, draw a diagonal line to the corner and sew. Turn it out and press. Do the same to the other belt. Now we will prep our facing. For the back facing, place the fabric and interfacing right sides together. This means that the glue side of the interfacing is facing up. Pin the two pieces together along the outer edge. Then sew 1/4 inch from the edge. Trim the seam allowances, leaving 1/8 of an inch. Now do the same to the front facing. Place the fabric and interfacing right sides together, pinning them along the outer edge. Then sew 1/4 inch from the edge. Trim the seam allowances, again leaving 1/8 of an inch. Turn your facing inside out so that your main fabric is visible for just a few millimeters and press to fixate this edge. You can base stitch or pin to make this easier. Press the outer edge little by little. Then, from the center out, press the entire piece. This is a great way to have a clean, finished edge if you don't have a serger. Do the same to the front facing. Check the neckline facing pieces to make sure that they are the same and that they equal the paper pattern. Adjust if needed. Take the front neckline facing, matching the narrow end to the back neckline facing, and sew right sides together. Press seam allowances apart. Now we're going to work on our bodice. Take the bodice front and transfer the dart to both sides. You can do this by placing a pin at the point of the dart, flipping to the other side, placing another pin in the same spot, and separating the two bodice pieces. Fold the dart in half, matching the clips of the dart, and draw a straight line from the point down to the clips. Pin and sew. I always start sewing about 1/4 of an inch ahead of the point to make it a little curved to follow the natural shape of the bust. Do the same to the other bodice. Press the dart while it's folded, then open it up, making sure that the dart is folded back underneath, and place the point of the dart on the curve of your ham and press. This will form the curved shape of the dart. I also have this half sphere, which I use to press the bust area. Now we're going to stabilize the neckline with interfacing so that it won't stretch out while we're sewing. Cut a strip of non-stretch interfacing, 5/8 of an inch wide and as long as the neckline on your paper pattern, and press. Do the same to the other front bodice piece. Also do the same to the back neckline, making sure to follow the curve. Sew the shoulder seams. Serge and press. Also, serge the sides of the bodice, both front and back. Let's complete our bodice and neckline. Mark 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the bodice. Take the short belt and place it at the mark on the right side. Place the longer belt on the mark on the left bodice piece. Match the shoulder seams on the facing and the bodice. Match the edges and the control points and pin all around. Sew the neckline facing to the bodice. Trim the seam allowances at the shoulder seams. Open up the facing, making sure that the seam allowances are underneath the facing, and do an understitch. This means that your seam will be on the neckline facing. This will prevent the facing from sticking out of your neckline. Trim the seam allowances to 1/8 inch. Iron the seam and press the facing. Fold the facing to the wrong side of the bodice and press following the curve. If there's a trace of the facing on your bodice, just fold the facing back and press the bodice by itself. On the right side, where the short belt is, mark 1/2 inch seam allowance up from the edge. Place the front and back of the bodice right sides together and pin where we made the mark. Then, measure the width of your belt and mark that distance from our previous mark. This will be our belt opening. 1/2 inch from the edge, sew the side seams to the top mark, do a backstitch, then skip the belt opening, and sew the rest 1/2 inch and complete with the backstitch. Open the seam allowances and top stitch around the belt opening. Sew the other side seam and press both. Let's start on our sleeves. We have 4 control points on our sleeves. The lowest control point indicates the back side of the sleeve. The highest point is the center point of the sleeve, and it matches with the shoulder seam. The other 2 points indicate the gathering, so we will gather our sleeves from one point through the center point and passing the other point. Change your machine settings to gathering with a stitch width of 5 points. Starting 1/2 inch before the first point, sew to 1/2 inch after the third point. Pull on one thread and gather the top of the sleeve. Do the same to the other sleeve. Sew the side seams of the sleeve and serge. Measure and mark 1.5 inches up from the bottom of the sleeve. To hem, double fold 1/8 inch and start sewing right before the seam. Take your elastic, equaling the measurement of your bicep plus 1/2 inch for seam allowance, and mark the center. Mark the center of your sleeve as well. Place the elastic along the line that we marked, and starting at the side seam, fasten it to the seam of the sleeve. Then stretch the elastic, matching our marks at the center sleeve and elastic, and sew on one side. At the end, place the elastic over the beginning, overlapping about 1/2 inch. Finish with the backstitch. Now, sew on the other side of the elastic. Set in the sleeve by matching the side seams of the sleeve and the bodice together, the mark at the top of the sleeve with the shoulder seam, and the mark at the bodice and the sleeve back. You must choose the right sleeve to match with the right armhole. Sew in the sleeve and serge. Hide your thread. I do it with a little hook. And here is our beautiful sleeve. We'll finish the dress with the skirt. Sew the side seams of the skirt, matching the notches. Serge. First, press the seam flat. Then, press the seam allowances to the back of the skirt. Sew together the ruffle pieces and gather one side with a stitch width of 5 points. Divide the ruffle in half, mark, and then divide each half and mark the centers. Take the bottom of the skirt and make a mark at the center of the back. Then pin the ruffle to the skirt, matching the side seams with the quarter marks and the center back of the skirt with the center of the ruffle. Pin between the control points, evenly distributing the gathering. Change the settings back to regular and sew the ruffle to the skirt. Serge the edge and take out your gathering threads. Finish the edge of the skirt by double folding 1/8 inch and sew. Clip the seam allowances on an angle. This will make it easier to sew over it. Do the same to the other side. For the hem, double fold 1/8 inch and pin the corner. Place the machine needle into the fabric at the hem, 1/4 inch from the top edge. Take out the pin at the corner, fold the fabric and do a backstitch. This way your machine won't jam the fabric. Match the center back of the bodice with the center back of the skirt, as well as the side seams. Match the front of the skirt with the front bodice, and fold the bodice facing over the skirt and pin. Do the same to the other edge of the skirt. Pin in between our control points and sew the skirt to the bodice. I sewed from the bodice side. Turn out the corners of the facing and check if it's just right. serge the waistline seam. Snip the corner of the waistline seam, and here is our clean finished edge. Secure the facing at the shoulder seam by hand stitching. Don't forget to give your dress a finishing press. And we are done with our beautiful Claire wrap dress. Enjoy!